Hi, my name is Michael C. Andrews. This is Yuba City, California, and I'm the result of this layout. It's really a layout relative to my life since I was age 3 in Sacramento, and my dad used to take me down to 7th Street, which was the east end of the yards on the S curve before it went to Roseville. And I would run around and look at the trains, and I vaguely remember that a little bit. But then the family on my dad's side and my mother's lived in Corning. He had a 36 Buick Special, inline 8, and he loved to drive it. So I'd ride in the back, and we'd go up to Corning. Well, you could go along 99W, or you could go down along 99E. And it's still that way, and you see the trains, and at the time it was all steam trains. I really like to see that, they said. I don't really remember that much, but I remember living in Corning and going down to the depot, which is on the layout behind us over there where the tower is, and that was the Mayfield Hotel. And the tower was, so if you wanted to live in Corning, you could go up in the tower and the real estate guy would show you where the property was. That had nothing to do with trains other than the fact that I went past that hotel all the time to get to the depot. I was fortunate one time to, it was summer and it was about 105, 110, even in the shade. And south of the depot, I was standing, I was probably 9, 10 years old. And for some reason, there was a cab forward round face across on the spur. I don't know why, because there was no caboose behind it or anything. The engineer motioned to me to come across the tracks, so naturally I did. And of course, he asked a foolish question, do you want to come up in the cab and see the firebox? Well, sure. Now, mind you, how hot it was in Corning and what it was in that cab, and they showed you the firebox. And I said, do you want to take a little ride? Well, I did. I went probably 300 yards, something like that, and came back, and I thanked him. Well, that's why I have that cab forward there on the layout, 4228, that ran in Northern California. All the engines basically ran somewhere in Northern California because I tried to pick one for SP and even WP, but SP had a whole variety of engines, one of each one. So anyway, the focus of the layout is right here at Binney Junction. Here's pictures of it before they tore it down. Here's old pictures when it went down into Marysville. So the crossover there is made from GPS to scale of what it really was, and that determined the arcs in the layout going to Marysville and then going around and eventually past Corning and whatever. And so I tried to pick venues where I'd been raised and buildings that were part of my life. And the church where my wife and I were married, here's a picture of it with my wife and I after we were just married. And this is the front of the church. And those were all these buildings in this area here. The Sacramento Yards and most of the buildings in Marysville were made by Dave Hain, MTech in Elk Grove, which is South Sacramento. You give him a picture, and I took lots of pictures. I have dossiers on all these buildings to do it accurately. And he puts the picture in his computer, and it programs it, and then it cuts out all the window panes and all the fine stuff. Like the roundhouse here, it's to scale of what it was. It's not in the proportional, because I didn't have the room. The erecting shops are to scale width and height, but not in length. They're half the size because I just didn't have the room. I have a list here of a minimum 23 people that were really involved with this layout because I could only go so far. The Vargas twins did a lot of the decoration and groundwork. I set it up originally, but didn't have the talent to do everything. So I needed help, and that's where these 23 other people, Errol Spangler did a lot of the electronics in the engines. They're all decoded and on and on and on. Harry Heike did this packing house, and it's in Lodi, so it really exists. Well, I don't model Lodi, but I model a packing house, and I needed one because my youngest son was working for Sunkist for 20 years, and that's why it's the Sunkist colors. But then he left and went to Bari Produce, so he's a distributor for Bari Produce, and this is his building. It doesn't exist in Live Oak, but I wanted a packing house in Live Oak, so that's downtown Live Oak along Broadway. And this farm right here is right around the corner from the house, about 300 yards from here. And all those buildings exist, and you can see the pictures of Railroad Avenue, which is right across the street, and that was the SP line that came from Yuba City, Marysville, down to Davis. That was the shortcut to take agricultural crops to San Francisco rather than going through Sacramento. Well, this farm was part of that, and these box cars, cattle cars, where they loaded peaches, were part of this farm. I was fascinated by poultry cars. They came out of Petaluma, and then they would go all the way back east. They would park those poultry cars like I did here, and women that had chickens around the house, they would take their chickens down and get money for them, and they'd put them in those poultry cars. And then in the center was a bed and a stove, etc. And a guy took care of the chickens all the way back to New York. And when he got close, he'd feed them little rocks and stuff to make them weigh more, etc. And then he'd sell some of the chickens on the way. So that's why that's parked there. I had, when I was a kid, a Lionel train I bought, and I gave deep thought to three things: Lionel train, O-scale two-rail trains, and then Proto 48. Well, I decided I didn't want the center rail, so I went to two-rail, O-scale, because I liked that size as opposed to HO. And I kind of did it backwards, because I bought all the engines, like a kid in a candy store. And then I did all the buildings I wanted, for the most part. And every building in this layout, 97% of them really existed. Some are pretend, but I tried to match what was in Northern California for SP and WP. And I liked the detail of it. And you could see the detail of it in O scale, I think, better than HO. But HO is a whole lot easier because you can get more in a given spot. This building is 2,000 square foot. It's in our backyard. And that was a project, too, because I had to decide where I was going to put all this stuff. I had it stored in the front bedroom. And I thought, I got to deal with this or get out of it. One of the two. I bought all this stuff. What am I going to do? So I figured out I could put this building back here because it was just ivy and a walnut tree and tough to mow and all that stuff. So I put up the building, had it built, and my wife kept saying, "What's that for?" I said, "That's your building for trains." Oh, she kind of didn't get it at first. So anyway, that's why I picked O scale, because I like the detail of it, and the detail of all the buildings. They're as accurate as I could make it. And at one time we had nice wide aisles, but then you get greedy and, well, I got this and I want that. And the Vargas twins helped me in that regard, but some of these are a weight reduction program because to get down them, you kind of have to suck it up. This right here in front of you was the original layout that was a module. It was 28 feet long and 4 foot wide, and I took it to train shows. And this was the display. That's my wife and I. And this Dave Hain here in Sacramento, and he did the modules and the buildings, essentially. I carted it around in a U-Haul truck. Took it to Sacramento, took it to Bakersfield, and she enjoyed it because she had her lady friends that had their husbands that went to these train shows. So the gals would go off and do things, so it worked out pretty well. Then, when I decided to do the layout, built the building, obviously, and this was built in 2011. And then I had all the stuff to put in it, so I did it backwards. And then after I set it up for a while, I knew I needed help. So I asked Earl Spengler who I should get, and he told me the Vargas twins. And I'd seen their work before down at O-Scale West, and it all made sense to me, so I had them come up, and here's what you see. The WP and the SP crossed at Benny Junction in Marysville, and so that's why I picked those two roads to model. There is one Great Northern engine, an Oriental. It's really cool. It's an articulated that I bought for WP just because they were tied into the Great Northern to compete with SP and etc., and which was really the monster in California. So the buildings over here that you see in the background, that's Yuba City. Here is Marysville. The Siemens Lumber Company I worked at when I was in high school and college. And the refrigeration yard, that's because there was a lot of agriculture in Yuba City, Marysville. So there was a lot of reefers. And clear on the back, the west end of the building, the full length is the... I was always impressed on Vernon Street in Roseville, the ice platforms and all the reefer cars. So it's about 14 feet long of the ice house in Roseville, and pictures describing it. It was huge because there was so much agriculture in California to get foods back east once they developed reefer cars. And when I was in high school, I loaded melon balls in one of those wood reefer cars, and it was really cold, just with 4 bunkers of ice. And it was hot outside, but it was sugar cold in those, and that was because of that Union Ice House. Yuba City has the Sacramento Northern with it because they went from the Bay Area to Sacramento and Sacramento to Marysville, and from Marysville to Yuba City, and then on up to Chico. So this here is Sutter in the background. I knew the family that owned the High and Dry warehouse. The reason it's called High and Dry, it's the elevation, it's on the edge of the buttes. So the valley used to flood all the time from the Sierras clear to the Coast Range, with the Sutter Buttes sticking up in the center, way back probably in the 1700s before they had the levee system. So they were high and dry. Interesting enough, though, their elevation is 62 feet, and so is Yuba City.
We're here in front of the Southern Pacific Shops in Sacramento. It was built by Dave Hain, a custom model builder. His specialty is laser cut buildings and other work also. He does beautiful palm trees. But this is one of the attention to detail I'd like to point out. Like if you look at all the beautiful windows, all these doors work, they have to be wired up. This is O-scale, so it takes a lot to build them this size and make them look great, and he did a fantastic job. We really appreciate working with Dave Hain because his attention to detail, and the models are fantastic. Hi, I'm Armando Vargas from Images Railroad Company. We're here at Mike Andrews' WP and SP layout. The railroad is modeled historically and it has some really neat scenery. So this part of the layout right here is part of the Ketty Y. And what's really unique about it is when you're building O-scale, it's hard to get people to build custom trees because they're always right to some smaller scale. So Andrew at Grand Central Scenery built these incredible trees, Andrew Ditto, and if it wasn't for his work, it captures the right field. It's like we're modeling off pictures. It's really extraordinary work. Sometimes you don't have a big room. This is how we create the effect. The smaller trees go there, then there's medium trees here, and you have the larger ones here. And you could do it in any scale. We're here in Yuba City area of the layout right here. It was really important when we were designing the layout, we weren't able to design it in its proper scale if it wasn't for Brad Strong's signature switches, which did all this intricate switching. So the whole layout was basically, we had to model off of compression. So Brad Strong was a very good help in aiding us in this railroad. If you were to do something as far as you could take it, this is what it would look like. But just like you guys, we love trains, and we wanted to say thank you to John and Sydney. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the work they do and being able to showcase the layout to your viewers. And we, being in business, enjoy the support when people love our work, and we love his work. So please help them out, send them, to Patreon. It's really great because we'd love to see more stuff, and everybody would love to see more stuff. So get them out there to do more stuff so we'd enjoy it.
I want to thank you for watching this, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you're in Yuba City, you can come by and see it as long as it's here. One day it may be gone, but I don't know when that is. So anyway, thank you, and enjoy O-Scale Trains.